Today we're going to talk about performance management, but just keep in mind this is a very quick and brief intro and primer on performance management. You can go out, you can take entire courses, entire semesters just on this concept, but we'll cover kind of the highlights of performance management here in the next handful of minutes. Performance management has a few kind of primary roles when for its utilization. One is to, and these aren't necessarily in any sort of order, just kind of three primary objectives. One is to change behavior within the organization. We've got a kind of organizational behavior culture problem. We can implement some performance management theory and practices to try to change behavior within the organization. With that goes goal alignment. So you have organizational goals, you have agency goals, and then each one of the employees, you included, myself included, have their own personal goals. Whether or not they state them or make them known is up to them, but we try to align our agency goals, our organizational goals, with our employees' personal goals. And when that happens, we have goal alignment and we end up with a lot of buy in. For where the agency is heading or where you want your agency to head, and then we can change behavior, right? And then also, number three, we can change, or I should say, influence the decisions that are being made within the agency. And we kind of change the way decisions are being made, kind of changing up the status quo just a little bit. As we move forward with implementing a performance management system within our organization, there are some basic components that we need to kind of keep an eye on, make sure they're well implemented and tracked. So we have measurable objectives. So we want to do something. We want our agency to go somewhere, become something. We need measurable objectives. And you may have heard of SMART objectives, SMART goals. That falls under this measurable component. So SMART objectives are just an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely or time bound. So we don't make an objective and say we're just gonna, that'll happen at some point, right? So it's got to be time bound. So it falls under the measurable objectives. So we have objectives, but they've got to be measurable because we're going to track them, and we're going to track these objectives and our progression, our progress towards these objectives pretty regularly. This could be monthly, could be quarterly, could be annually, depending on the objective and depending on what the outcome that you want. As we track these objectives, we're going to take action if they're not being met. So if we're tracking them monthly, we're not going to wait an entire year to change course. We're not going to wait 12 months to kind of tweak something. Well, if we start seeing a pattern, start seeing a trend over 2 or 3 months, and this objective just is not being met on this monthly basis, well, then we can take action. We can tweak. This isn't necessarily punitive in any way. It's just whatever we thought would work isn't working completely, so we can change it up a little bit and try a new tactic. Looking from a broad perspective, our performance management cycle always starts with strategic planning, and that's something that we're not going to talk about because, again, that's a whole nother course sequence if you want to get into it. But it starts with strategic planning at the organizational level. What is important to the organization, for the organization? What should we be doing? What should we be striving for as an agency? So we take that strategic plan. Those are the important things that we want to do, let's say this year, and then we plan. So how are we going to implement the strategic vision, strategic plan? So we've got our objectives. We implement some things, and then we collect the data. And remember, we are regularly tracking these data, and I say data because our objectives need to be measurable. So if we're measuring something, we can collect something. So we're collecting these data. After we collect it, or as we're collecting it, right? Since we're tracking it regularly, let's say we're doing it monthly, we can analyze it monthly. So after we collect it, we can analyze the data, um, and if we are completely on track to satisfy that objective, to reach that goal, reach that objective, then we don't need to adjust anything. If we're falling a little short, we can make little adjustments. If we're falling way big short, we can make big adjustments, and then that all kind of starts over again. So we again, if we've met those objectives, well, our next strategic plan might not have that objective in it because it's already been achieved and we can focus on other areas of our organization. And when we talk about the strategic plan, when we talk about what objectives organizationally should we be shooting for, well, this isn't the responsibility of one person. This isn't the director's job. This isn't the chief's job. This isn't your job. This is everyone's job. From top to bottom, very top to the very bottom, complete team effort, and everyone really should be involved in this process. So if your director just comes down and gives you an objective to go for, to shoot for this year, you're not going to be quite as happy, not going to buy in quite as much as if you were part of that conversation. If you and your chief and your team all sat down and said, what's important to you, what's important to you, what's important to you, what's important to administration, what's important to field staff, what's important to supervisors, what's important to field training officers. That's how we come up with good strategic plans and really robust and meaningful objectives. And thinking back to these SMART objectives, well, within performance management practice, we've got kind of 4 things that we need to keep in mind as we're building our objectives and going forward with these plans. One is the measure. So this is the what. What are we doing? It needs to be clearly defined. The target, so what are we doing, but how much of that thing are we doing, needs to be clearly defined. There's going to be, we said it needs to be time bound, needs to be timely. So when is this going to be finished? Is this objective, a 6-month project? Is it a 12-month project? Is it a 1-month project? So we've got this when. We've got deadlines. And with those deadlines, we've got these milestones. So if it's a 6-month project, I'm not going to check in with you after 6 months. We're going to meet milestones, maybe monthly, maybe every 6 weeks. Maybe there are different milestones. Maybe we have like 5 milestones within this objective, and the first milestone will take you 2 weeks, so we'll check in. And then the second milestone is going to take a little bit longer. It's going to take 6 weeks. Then we'll check in. And so we're going to make sure that not only do we have this deadline, this date in mind, but we're hitting milestones that tells us that we are on track. Right? Just like you going through the MHS program. You have different milestones. You've got different courses to take. And we're making sure, your advisor's making sure you're taking those courses and succeeding in those courses, so that the date you can graduate, right? So our objectives, we have to have a measure, we have to have a target, we have to have a date, and then we're going to have milestones within there to get us to that date. Now let's focus on the measure a little bit. So our measure is the what. The what are we doing? So under performance management, your measures should focus on outcomes and not activities. It's really easy just to just write an objective that is activity focused. It's kind of where we tend to go first, and it's kind of the easy route, right? Path of least resistance. Let's focus on activities. But for performance management, we really want to focus on outcomes. So if I wrote an objective, a measure that says we're going to conduct 100 frequent flyer assessments this year, that focuses on activity. I can do 100 assessments. Doesn't mean those assessments are doing anything. Doesn't mean they're quality assessments. Doesn't mean they're changing anything, changing behavior, changing performance, anything like that. So I can do 100 assessments, easy. But that's an activity. That's an activity-focused measure. Instead, let's kind of flip it around a little bit and say, instead of the measure itself being conducting 100 assessments, well, let's say the measure is to reduce responses to these frequent flyers by 10% this year. That's an outcome focused measure. And within that outcome focused measure, we can say, in order to get to that objective and to meet that 10%, we're going to conduct at least 100 assessments, right? So the activity focused stuff can be kind of the subset, and the means to which we satisfy, we get to that focused, or that outcome focused, excuse me, that outcome focused measure. And then when choosing measures, measures should align with the agency's strategic goals and that strategic plan. And that's kind of a big, kind of businessy, fancier way of saying the measure should be important. If in my response area we have one frequent flyer, well then that previous measure to reduce frequent flyer activations responses by 10% is probably not really an important goal to shoot for. So measures should be important to the agency, and they should or shouldn't be really easily achievable. If you can achieve a goal, a strategic goal for an agency within a couple weeks, it's probably you should probably be focusing on something else, something that can push the organization forward. And think about this in your daily life as well. All right. So if my goal is to run 100 yards every day, that's really easily achievable, right? I can run 100 yards, but it doesn't really push me, right? It's not saying I'm going to run 5 miles every week, or let's say 100 yards every week. So 100 yards every week versus 5 miles every week. You know what? I'm not really a runner. I hate running. Oh, shoot. Right? I'm not a runner. I'll do anything else except run. But 100 yards every week, easily achievable, not that important. 5 miles every week, still important, and it pushes me. So we want to push the agency, want to push our organization. The measure should also be timely, right? Not only time bound, but timely in its analysis and reporting. So if we've got this measure, we're collecting data on this measure, we're analyzing these data. Well, when we go to report it, I'm not going to report it a year later. Our managers, our supervisors, our field employees, everyone in that organization needs to know what's going on and what progress we're making towards that measure. And then these measures have to be clearly measurable, right? So we say they need to be clearly operationalized. So how are we going to operationalize this measure? So if I want to say our logistics team, our logistics department, I want to increase their productivity by 8% this year. We've got that 8%, that's pretty clear, but how do you measure productivity? So we can kind of pull back a little bit or dig in a little bit deeper to productivity. And what do we mean by productivity? Well, let's say my logistics department is in charge of restocking all of the units when they come back in. I'm kind of picking on Charlotte here on Medic a little bit. So ambulance comes in, and the logistics team is in charge of restocking that ambulance. Well, instead of saying we're going to increase productivity, we can say we're going to decrease the average time of restock per unit by 8%. So that's clearly measurable. And I've taken that productivity word and operationalized it by saying, productivity for a logistics department, what's important there? It's restock time. So we can turn around that unit so the next crew coming in can jump on and hit the road. So measures should be important. They should be timely, time-bound, and the reports of the measures should be timely so we can use that information. And then they should be clearly measurable. Now moving from our measures to our targets. Our targets is how much. Our measure was the what. So we used our logistics department and productivity, and then we defined productivity as average time to restock a unit, an ambulance. Now we're moving to this target. This is how much. Well, we said reduce average time by 8%. So the target should be measurable. we're going to reduce it by 8%. That's a very clear target, a very measurable target. Again, we're using the team to set this. I'm not going to, as a manager, I'm not going to go down to the logistics team and say, you're going to do this. We're going to get their input. Right? Are there efficiencies to be found? Are they already working at complete capacity? An 8% reduction is completely uh, ridiculous, right? So we're going to set these targets as a team. We're not going to dictate them, but these targets should stretch our organization and should push us forward, right? So maybe 8% is achievable, but it's a real stretch. That's okay. It's okay if we don't meet our target. It's just we want to be working towards progression and this progress and kind of bettering the agency and whatever facet it may be. So targets shouldn't be easy. Like I said, running, if I were to run 100 yards per week, that's pretty easy. If I set, that goal, that target to run 5 miles per week, that's going to stretch me. So it should stretch your organization, and it should be a little uncomfortable. To be honest. How do we set these targets? Well, we can look at past performance. I can look at the past performance of my logistics team, and what are their average restocking times, and say, okay, it takes you on average 16 minutes to restock an ambulance. I think we can get it down to 15 minutes, right? Because last year was 16 minutes, the year before that was 17 minutes and 23 seconds, and the year before that it was 17 minutes and 52 seconds. So we've got this pattern. We've got this trend. I think we can do a little bit better. Let's find some efficiencies. If you need, and this goes into that strategic plan. If you need an extra employee, if you want to advocate for that, right? There's something to be said there. So we can look at past performance, or, right? Usually both. So and or we can compare to other agencies. So maybe there's another agency that also has a similar logistics department that does similar things. So what are their what do their metrics look like? What's their average restock time for an ambulance? So we're just not going to make up a number. Please never just make up a number for your targets. We're going to benchmark based on past performance and or comparisons to similar agencies. And they don't have to be agencies around you. You're right. Maybe Charlotte, they're not going to look at Iredell County because Iredell County doesn't have its own logistics department. They're going to look at other large agencies that do have dedicated logistics people. They might be, out in California, might be in New York, might be in Florida. But as long as the agencies kind of function similarly, we can compare among these agencies. And then we have milestones. So this is the how are we going to get to that objective? How are we going to satisfy that objective? This is the action plan. So over the course of the next 12 months or 6 months or 3 months, whatever that time period is, how are we going to get there? That's our action plan, and we've got waypoints in there. We're going to do A, then we're going to do B, then we're going to do C, then we're going to do D, and that gets us to kind of satisfying that objective, achieving that objective. Our milestones, even though our measures and targets are more outcome focused, our milestones are typically more activity focused. So if I want my logistics department to reduce its average restock time by 8% in my milestones, I might say we're going to maybe change the staffing pattern. Maybe we're going to hire one extra person, right? Those are more activity oriented. We're going to change, maybe the way the stock room is organized. We're going to change the layout of the stock room. Just little milestones like that are more activity oriented. But if we say, okay, I'm going to change the layout of the stock room, we're going to put a timeline on that and say, okay, we've got 3 weeks. All right, it's going to take you 3 weeks to reorganize the stock room. So I'm going to check in with you in 3 weeks. And then we say, as a milestone, we're going to purchase a kind of a boop in, boop out scanner system for our stock room. Well, that's going to take a little while to order and to implement. So maybe that's a 3 month milestone. So I'll check in 3 months and see how training has gone and how the system is set up. And then we'll check in again later to see how it's being actually implemented. So milestones are our waypoints, our action plan, and generally more activity focused. The last thing we're going to kind of breeze over a little bit under performance management, the theory and practice, are logic models. So a logic model is just a way to kind of sketch out objectives and your thinking about maybe a program you want to implement. So maybe you want to implement a community paramedic program in your agency. Well, we're going to start with our early outcomes. What are your early outcomes anticipated to be, or what do you want them to be? And then we've got these kind of intermediate outcomes that happen after our early outcomes. So our early outcomes are first few months, maybe the first year. Intermediate outcomes the next couple years, and then late outcomes are like way down the road. What's the end result of this program? And we can also think of this as early outcomes. What inputs do we need to gain these early outcomes? In the intermediate portion of it, what outputs are we going to get? And then later on, what outcomes are we going to be seeing? And to give an example, maybe we want to vaccinate all of our employees for the flu every single season. Well, what's that going to do? The early outcomes, just the number of vaccines that we give, right? This is early on. We're just doing it. So that how many? What's the number of vaccines that we're giving to our employees? We've got 50 employees. Are we giving 50 vaccines? Are we hitting that target? Our intermediate outcomes. What do we expect to happen as a result of this program, of these vaccines? Well, fewer lost work days. Fewer employees are going to be sick. If they do get sick, hopefully they'll be sick, I guess, for a shorter period of time. And then those long-term outcomes are like really long-term, so greater overall health. I've got an employee that works with us for 25 years, getting a flu vaccine every single year. Over the course of her time with us, greater overall health. So we've got early outcomes, just a number of vaccines. We've got these intermediate outcomes. What happens from the number of vaccines? Well, fewer lost work days. And then way down the line, 20 years down the line, greater overall health because of this program. And with logic models, we really don't have to put any numbers on it. This is just putting our ideas down on paper in kind of a logical way from start to finish. What do we want to do? What do we expect? How are we going to do it? What are our inputs? What are we going to get from those inputs? What are our outputs? And then long down the road, those intermediate and long-term outcomes, what's going to be the end result of that program? So how are we going to do it? What are we going to get from it? And then what's going to be the overall outcome? So when we're doing logic models, we're just writing down ideas on a piece of paper, right? No numbers involved. This isn't anything like really super organized. It's just kind of sometimes just a brain dump onto a piece of paper. So if this helps you, if you're one of those visual people and you're sketching out, you want a new program, or you've got some ideas for some objectives, organizational objectives, we can sketch them out using a logic model. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or cuss words, please feel free to let me know.